Hello, my crafty friends. We're going to try this warping video one more time. The last one I did, I had my camera set up where I was using um, the audio from my laptop instead of the audio from the webcam, and I didn't realize that. So you can't hear half of what I'm saying. That might have been a good thing. You might have wanted to just turn it off and just watch. But sometimes you need to hear stuff in order to learn what you're doing. This is the loom that I bought from Alex Workshops Design, and um, and I love this loom. I'm so happy that I bought it. So I wanted to show you how to warp it. The This time I'm also using a 7.5 dent reed instead of a 10 dent reed, and I'm using a bigger yarn. So we're going to go ahead and warp this the traditional way, which is to take um, the yarn through the slots and warp each slot and leave the holes till later. The second step is to take one piece of yarn from each slot and move it into a hole. And then you have one yarn in each slot in each hole. And that's the way we're going to warp it this time. I started out by going ahead and tying up um, the apron bar um, so that it would be out here even. Because last time when I did it, I started from one side and I noticed that it was kind of like this at an angle, and that's not good. So this time I'm doing it this way, and I'm just going to take this yarn and go through here, and I'm going to tie a knot in it. And then I'm also going to go around it because last time I didn't do that, and I ended up with my next one the next piece kept wanting to slide off, and you don't want it to slide off over this one. You want this to hold everything in place. So we're going to try a different method this time and see if that works better. We're going to go through the slot and then down here to the warping peg, and then we'll go back and because it's on top, we're going to bring it underneath, and we'll go through again the next slot, and we'll bring it down here, and you want to keep it the tension pretty similar. It doesn't need to be really tight. You can see this isn't really tight, but it's tight enough to hold it in place. And we're going to do it again. Go this time it was coming out from underneath, so we're going to go through the top, and we're going to bring it down here. Uh-oh, there we go. Yarn got caught. And then we're going to go underneath and take it in this slot again. In this slot again. And this one's under. So we have to go over and stay on this side of this cord this time. Next time we'll go the other direction. We'll go over the cord, but you can't come over the cord when you're underneath, or you'll end up catching this and it'll be a headache for the rest of the whole time you're warping. So we're going to come down here, and this time we're going to go on this side of that cord and take them to the through the next slot. And now that we've got the general idea, I'm going to see if I can get in a little closer. Sorry. I'm not used to using my left hand. I'm left-handed, but I'm not used to using my left hand to do this with because, to use the mouse, because when I was learning to use the computer, everybody else in my house was, and at the office, were all right-handed. So I had to leave the mouse, because back then, it had a cord attached to it. You had to leave it where it was. And so I learned how to use the mouse on the right side instead of the left side. So now I still do that, Whatever you learn first, that's what you tend to stick with. And so, as you can see, we're going to go over this bar and catch it in here. Oh, yeah, in that slot. And then we're going to go back here again. And we're just going to do this all the way across. And every time we come to one of these, we're going to make sure we're up here so we can go over it instead of trying to come from underneath, because that'll mess it up. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to finish going across, and then we'll go on to the next step. Oops, I forgot I moved it over here. Okay, I decided to show you one more thing, and that is when you're switching yarn. If you want to make stripes or something, then you have to change yarn, or if you run out of yarn or you find a knot in the yarn, you would need to tie off. And it's real easy to do. You just cut your yarn back here somewhere, and then you tie it off. And whoops, sorry about that. I took my strings that I had holding the this in place, and my warping pegs down there are not completely centered, so it's trying to pull it off center a little bit. If you do a better job centering than I did, you won't have to mess with that. But I'm going to put in a strip of white here. So I tied it off here and I tied it off there. And then I'm going to add the white. And here's the white. I'm using some Aunt Lydia's crochet yarn that I got at a thrift store. This is a denim, and then this is white. And all I do is pick up this one and put this one down. You can see how much I've used, because this one used to be this size. So it takes a lot of yarn to warp. And then I'm going to tie on right here. And I just tied, a double knot. Nothing fancy. And then you just start where you left off. You'll notice that this one has 2 warping pegs, and they're not very tall. So you warp from one side on one and the other side on the other one. And some looms come with a taller warping peg and just one. So it just depends on your loom and what the manufacturer or the creator woodworker decided to do. And if you are doing a narrow warp, then you don't have to use both of them. You can just use one and just center it. Oops. I'm just going to keep on going here until we get to the end, and we'll tie it off. And then we'll be ready for step number 2. And if you don't want to make stripes, you don't have to worry about tying things off. You can just, sorry about that. That is my fault, not the loom's fault. Now here, we're going to go underneath, but we're going to go on this side of that, the string that's holding the apron bar on there. Ooh, I almost skipped a slot. You don't want to do that, because then you'll have to adjust everything to fill it in. And it's better to check your work than to have to do that. Oh, goodness. Now I'm going to go ahead and start taking this one to that other warping peg. Probably should have left my little ties on there, then I wouldn't have had this trouble, even though I had it crooked. You can get in a lot of steps, especially if you're doing a long warp. You can you have to walk all the way across the room. This is not a very long warp. It's only about I think 85 inches long. I'm just going to make some kitchen towels out of this to see if I like them better with this yarn than I did the thin crochet cotton that I used on the last one. We're almost there. We just got 2 slots to go, and then we'll be finished with this step. Okay, one more. Okay, now when we get here, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to cut that yarn, and then we're going to tie it off. And the next step is to take it off of the warping pegs and wind it on to the back beam. This is the back of the loom, and we'll wind it onto this back beam down here, and this is the warp beam, and then we will work with our heddles next. I'm going to pause it while I get some help to do that. Well, didn't work. Okay, I got some help. This is my daughter Hannah. She's gonna be my extra hands to help me wind this warp on. But first we have to tie it off a little ways out so that it's not so that we don't end up tangling up the threads any more than we have to. So we're gonna make 2 ties, and we're gonna go about here, and we're going to tie a choke tie. So we're going to tie it pretty tight. And I'm going to tighten the bow and hope that it holds, because the bow is a lot easier to get off. But lots of times I don't tie a bow. I usually go ahead and tie a knot and then cut it off. But that's a little bit dangerous, because you might cut one of your warp threads. And I don't want to do that on a video, so I'm going to do it this way. Okay. Hannah, if you will hold this and hold it back there. Okay. Now then, what I'm going to do is take this and cut right at the very end. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. Cut right at the very end. Now she's going to hold on to these while I wind the warp on. I'm having some struggles with that right now. Okay. Let me get my warping sticks. Here they are. Okay. These are warping sticks, and you just put them in, and they help the warp wind on safely. Okay. Once you hold it up here, no, I'm sorry, these, and then go ahead and pull them taut. Good. And we're just going to let it wind on. And we're going to go down, and when we, let me tilt this, sorry. You can see more what we're doing. When we get this around here, we don't want the warp to wind in on itself. So we take one of these, and we put it in there, and then we wind a little bit more. And we take another one, and we just keep laying them in there. And they will keep the warp from compacting. You don't have to do this, you know, solid. You can kind of stick them in intermittently here. Okay. One thing that's important to do is to make sure that you keep your warp, and I've already had it fall off a little bit, from falling off the end over here. And we just keep going. Okay, let me lock this in place here, and we'll untie these chokes. And then we can, I'll do this one if you want to do that one, and we can come back here and just shake them out and straighten them up a little bit. Okay, and now we start again. You have to do that every once in a while. Okay, let me go back. At this point, you can probably just continue to roll without adding more of these. I'm going to save some of them because I'm going to need some of them in the front. Here, let me tighten that. We're about to get it done here. This one's a lot easier than that last one, isn't it? Okay. As you advance the warp, these will fall out, and then you can transfer them to the front. I'll go ahead and stick in a couple more. Okay, let's go ahead and straighten them out a little bit more. We need to advance it a little bit more because we can go this far and we don't need this much. We just need enough to tie it on. So we're gonna go a little bit more. You want to try to keep all the threads tensioned about the same. That's not always easy to do, but I think we can go a little bit more. Let's stick one more of these in there. All right. I think that's good. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, I'm going to pause this while I turn the loom around, and then we will continue on. Okay, the next step is to take the yarn, and we've got in each of these slots, you can see we've got 2 yarns, or 2 strings, 2 pieces of yarn, and what we're going to do is take one of them and well, let's go and take it out, and then we put it in the slot. And this is kind of awkward from this angle. But so now we've got a slot and a hole, and then we grab the next 2, and you're gonna you can do it either on the right side or the left side. You just have to do it the same all the way across. We're gonna take the put this in here and take one of these and catch it. Sometimes it works easier than other times, that you can just catch it like that, and then we move those over here just to get them out of the way. We'll take another more. I think it's easier for you to see if I just pull one out, and then grab it from back here. And then we move these 2. And you do that all the way across. Just choose one. And then after you've got a few of them done, you just check and make sure that they're moving freely. And then you tie like a loose knot or slip knot, something like that, where you can untie it pretty easy. I do it like this and leave it hanging down there. That way it won't end up getting pulled out accidentally. So, and if you do that every inch or so all the way across, that's pretty much how you do this step. So I'm gonna do a couple more, and then I'm gonna pause the video and okay, you don't want to do that. I grabbed just part of it and kind of shredded the yarn. That's not a good plan. Luckily, it's just right here at the end, and it's going to be tied off anyway, but you want to avoid that if you can. Oh, I kind of got a mess here. Okay. I just lost my little hook. Put it through the next slot and grab a hold. Sometimes it's better to actually use both hands, so you don't, sometimes you can find faster ways to do things, and sometimes, whoops, sometimes what you hope will be faster ends up not really being that much faster. So sometimes it's better just to find something that works and stick with that. And here we have another set. Make sure they go up and down, so we've got them like we want them, and tie a little slip knot and let it hang down, and then we'll work our way all the way across, and I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, I decided not to clamp it down this time. You can clamp the loom down if you want to do the next step, but I don't think I want to worry about that. I do want to show you the towels that I made off the last warp that I put on. This is one of them. Looks like this. And if you'll remember, I was trying to make it look like the stripes were random, and so the weft stripes are kind of random too. It's nice and soft, and I think it's going to be nice. This is the one that I did using just one weft thread across. If you can see, you've got two coming this way and only one going across that way. This is the one that I did where I have two warp threads coming down, and then I used two weft threads going across. I made a few mistakes. There's one. There's one. But I would not find these until I'd done several picks, and since they're for my kitchen and it was an experiment anyway, I didn't bother unweaving to go back and fix them. If I'd been making them for someone else, I would have gone back and fixed them. But after we get it warped and I start weaving a little bit, I'll show you a way to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, we're going to start by taking a couple of them in the middle. I'll let that one down. And we're going to split it in half and go like this, so that we're going around the bar on each side, and then we're going to twist it a couple of times and bring them together and pull it down, and that'll hold that in place. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do one the same way over here, and I'm going to go one on each side of this little thing. That way it'll hold this in place. It won't slide off, but it'll still give me that little bit of extra room that I need at the end, so that my warp can be as coming as straight from this front beam as possible, from this front apron rod. That's what this is called, it's the apron rod. On some looms they're round. This particular one comes with ones that are whoops, let me pull that a little bit. There we go. Ones that are you know, a big rectangle, and so you can choose. Now over here I had two that I only had 3 in each dent, so I'm gonna And if I split those, they would be really small. So instead, I'm going to use them together, which makes this side a little bit bigger, a little bit wider bunch than most of the rest of them will be. But that's okay. Okay, now we've got it where it's kind of the same. Those three are kind of the same. And so I'm going to go across and I'm going to put them all in there. I do these three first because that keeps this at about the same tension. Otherwise, if you start here and you work that way, it tends to kind of angle like this. And you don't want that. You want it to stay straight so that you start off with your weaving straight. So I'm going to pause the video for a few minutes and I'm going to tie the rest of these on, and then I'll show you how to adjust your tension before you get started weaving. Be right back. Okay, we're about to tie the last bunch on. I wanted to discuss something that I didn't mention earlier, and that is that when you're doing this, when you're deciding where you're going to start tying your warp on to the front beam, front apron rod, you need to decide, you want to make sure you have enough yarn to go around so you can make the ties and not make it really difficult for yourself. But you also don't want to leave so much extra that you end up with wasting a lot of your yarn. And these turned out about right, I think. It's possible I could have made it a little shorter, but I really think this works well. Once you've got them all on there like that, you can see these are kind of loose and these are firmer and this one's kind of loose. So you want to go back and you just pull, this is where you will wish that you had it tied down. Pull it like that, and let's go to this side. And then you're going to just go back and forth across from one side to the other, because you want to keep your tension. You want to make sure your tension is the same all the way across. I'm having to prop my arm kind of here to keep my loom from walking away because I didn't tie it down. But that's not a huge, as you can see, that's not a huge thing. But it might make it a little easier on you if it was tied down. The other thing you could do is the loom has some, I'll show you in just a minute, some places where some notches, so you could set it against a table and then hold it in your lap, and so that table would keep it pretty snug, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it walking away from you. And then once you've got it across where it feels like it's pretty firm, you can feel this one's a little looser, maybe not a lot, it's pretty good. And go back and give it one more little tug, and then I just go ahead and stick another knot in it because I don't really have enough yarn to make a tie a bow, which would be easier to untie. But I end up just cutting since I'm not making something with fringe, I end up just cutting it off anyway, so it's not a big deal. So I'm just going to go back and forth across and snug it up a little bit more. And then tie a knot in. And not too much, just enough to keep it the same. You want now? Let me let my dog out real quick. Go on. Okay. just snug it up a little bit and put that last knot in there to hold it tight, because you don't want your warp to come loose when you start weaving. That would be very frustrating. This is a little bit of a process, but it's worth it, and worth it to do it right. I don't know if you've noticed looking at this, but I've got a little bit more warp on this side than I do on this side of the blue. And that is because when I was putting it through the heddle at the beginning, when I was running my warp to the peg, I accidentally threaded one slot down here twice. So on this one right here, I put 4 threads in there instead of 2. And so I had to add, I just scooted it over. And so I'm using one more dent on this side than I am on this side. And I could have taken those 2 threads out if I was worried about everything being perfectly symmetrical. But it's kind of a little bit of a headache to take them out, because then you have to watch them unwind as you go, and they just keep getting in the way. And I just wasn't in the mood to mess with that, so I went ahead and just left them in there and made it just a little bit bigger on one side than it is on the other. If I was being a perfectionist, or if this was a gift I was giving someone, then I would take them out and I would mess with that mistake. But since it's just for me, I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, now we've got it warped, and we're going to start weaving. And what you do, well, let me show you this first. Right here is the notch that you can put up against the table so that you can hold the front part in your lap to weave. That definitely makes it a lot easier to use. I'm using it right now in my recliner with this put against a table in front of my chair, and it works really well. I enjoy it using it that way. Also, when you're moving your warp, you have to take tension off here so that this can turn, and then you turn this one so that it winds forward. And I'm gonna open up, back off a little bit from zooming, and see if we can get all that in there so you can see me do all of that. Okay. It's still not going to be real easy to see. Let me move some stuff and see if that'll help. Okay. Maybe if I'm working sideways here, you can see me work there. And these are the same sticks that I stuck in when I was putting the warp on the warp beam, and I'm going to use them to get past these knots so that the knots don't make bumps in my weaving as I'm going. And hopefully I may, oh, sorry, I have to listen to my phone. I forgot it was out here. I don't usually have it when I'm doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this, and you leave this in the neutral position while you're doing this. And I'm going to loosen this, and I'm going to let it roll. And then this one you don't have to loosen, you just pull it forward. And pull it forward. Okay, now then we got here, but these are kind of loose, so I'm going to tighten them up with just this front one so I can start weaving. Okay, now let me turn the loom back around here, and I'll show you how to start weaving. And I'm not ready to actually go around and add these into the front, but when I get ready to do that, I will show you that as well. But what I'm going to do first is just we need all of these to be some way, and I'm going to just make them all come down because that's what they're wanting to do right now, so that when I do turn it, everything will be in the same place. Okay. I'm going to pause for a minute and see who needs me so desperately. I'll be right. Okay. Now we're going to start weaving, and the first thing you want is a contrasting color or bigger yarn. I didn't have a bigger yarn, so I'm just going to use doubled, and you want 3 or 4 or 5 picks of that, and then you're going to start. I always start going left to right, and let me get my shuttle. That'll make it a little easier to do this. I put this on the shuttle like this, just stick it through like that. That way I can just take the shuttle through right here. Make sure I'm getting it. And then, oops, I didn't think that through. It's all right. It's still maybe a little faster than putting it through with my fingers. And then you put that in there. You work it kind of down. And then you do another one. Let's try putting this one through with my fingers and see how that goes. Oh, I forgot to change the shed. You have to do that. Change the shed to the down position. And then put it through. And I'm skipped a thread. This one's acting like it's not as tight as the others. Let's see if this is. Okay, see right here? I skipped a couple of threads. So I need to take that back out and put it back in. The down shed on this loom is looser than the up shed. And I haven't used rigid heddle looms enough to know if that's common, but I would assume that it probably is. The up shed is nice and tight. We're going to put another one in. Like this. And then I'm going to beat it and move them all down here together. See how that's straightened out pretty good there? And these at the end we'll just take out. So there's not very much loom waste there. I think I may do one more. So let's go to the down shed and see if one more will make it even a little bit better. I may do 2 more. I really like mine to be ready to start my project when I've got this done. So let's put that one there. Let's move it to an up shed and add one more. And then this is going to be all I'm going to put in because it's all I have prepared. So if it's not perfect, it doesn't have to be. In fact, a lot of people would start weaving just right here. But I just want it to be as good as I can get it before we get going. Now you can see how nice that is. Let me put this underneath it so you can see how it's spread out really good right here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. See how it's spread out pretty good here. You can see these V's are getting smaller and smaller as you get there. So I'm almost ready to go ahead and start weaving. I am gonna just kind of, no, I'm just going to leave them. Okay. So to start weaving, the first thing you have to do is to go ahead and load your shuttle. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to start my weaving with this, the blue, the same blue as what's on the warp. And I always put a bowl down there with my stuff in it because my floor is not perfectly clean. If your floor is perfectly clean, you don't have to do that. And I'm going to make a slip knot here and put it over that. And then I just kind of hold it. And I go from there to inside this and then go outside and back inside that. So you're making kind of a figure 8 around this shuttle. And I just warp however much I want. If I wanted to be precise, you know, I could measure out exactly how many turns I take. But if I also, the other way to be precise about how much you're using of each color is to, if you only load one side, then you can leave the yarn on there if you have extra after you get, say you want to do 3 inches of blue and then 3 inches of white and then 3 inches of blue. When you've woven enough for 3 inches, you can leave any on there that's on there and load your white over here and keep going. So measuring it while it's on the loom is another way to be precise, and I prefer that method. And I don't know how much I'm going to do, and I'm not even sure I'm going to be precise about this. I kind of like it to look, you know, I like to do it while I'm going and just do whatever feels good. But if you want them to be precise, then you can make that choice. Okay, now we're going to start weaving. I've got my shuttle loaded. So I'm going to raise the heddle to the up position because I always start from the left, and I always start with my heddle in the up position. That way I know if I put it aside and I leave it in the neutral position so it's not stretching the warp while it's waiting, I know that when I come back, if the string is on this side, then I'm starting up, and if my string is on this side, I'm starting in the bottom position. And so let me see if I can back off again and show you the where those sheds are. I didn't do that earlier. Okay. Right here, locked in here is the lower position. Locked up here is the upper position. And you can see my shed right there. And then over here is the neutral position. And that's where you have it when you're warping it and when you leave it for a period of time. So right now it's in the up position, and this is the down position. All right. Let me zoom back in a little bit. So we're going to go, and I always run my, let me show you up here. I always run this angle kind of against the reed, and that helps me, if I do that in the middle of the shed, that helps me not pick up a lower thread by accident. And so then I take it across, and I leave some of this out, and I'll weave it in just a minute and show you how to do that. But right now I'm just going to leave some of it out, and I'm going to leave it at a little bit of an angle. I didn't do these at an angle because I was just spreading my warp, but you want the weft threads to go at a little bit of an angle so that your selvages won't scooch in. If you do them like this and you beat it, you may end up with your selvages scooching in. Also, because now you've got these threads that are trying to go up and down over your warp, and so it needs more thread than a straight across thread. Okay, that's not going to work. As you can see here, I didn't notice this, but now I laid that last pick in. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I laid that last pick in an up shed. So I can't start in an up shed or it'll mess things up. So I'm going to put it in a down shed and I'm going to start from this side instead of that side. I think I need to tighten this up a little bit more. If that happens to you at this point, you can still loosen it up. And then tighten it. And like I said, in the down shed, you're going to have some of them that just, okay, I shouldn't have done that because now it's not even over here. So let's loosen it up a little bit. And we're going to do it in neutral. Let's loosen it up a little bit. I should have just left it alone because now it's at an angle. Do you see that? It's at a little bit of an angle. This has got a little more space than over here. Okay, let's tie it back. And put it back in the down position. And then we're going to start with putting our shuttle in from this side. So you need to make sure those two kind of loosey threads, you need to make sure you're going under them. And then bring it up and beat, which really is press. You don't want to beat it. You want to be gentle because you want to protect your reed. And then we'll bring it to an up position. And this is a place where having it in your lap, kind of pressed against you, makes it easier to do too. And then if you bring it in here and you look, you can see that you've got all the up threads and no extra threads. And so then you can go on across because you know you got it right. And over here, you just make sure that it's right at the corner here. Kind of hold it there, snug, not pulling in, but just snug. And then bring it up like that at your angle. And you want to try to keep the same angle every time you, every pick about the same angle so that it has the same amount of pull in. And then we're going to go to this side. Whoops, my cord's getting in the way. And then you can pull it here and look at it. See, it's already and that's because I didn't have it exactly even when I started. So you want to try to make it as even as you can. And then you pull it on across. Once you get those out of the way, it'll be easier to do here. And you want to hold it kind of at this angle, right here snug. Make your angle. And then beat it. And then go back up here. And we'll do the next pick. And look, you don't have to do that every time, but it is when you're, especially when you're starting, it's a good idea so that you know, because it is sometimes difficult to see, especially if you have one thread like that one that wants to lay down low and that one. And then you can pick up your speed a little bit once you kind of get used to doing it. Make sure it's snug and at an angle. And then back to your up position. And there we've got it going. Let's see if I can lift this up a little bit so you can see it better. There's our first inch or so of weaving. And after you get through, it will, they will, you know, compact a little bit. That's why you need to, when you're warping, you need to give yourself extra length, and you need to weave it longer than you want it to be. Plus you need a little extra width on how wide you want it to be, because it will shrink when you take it off the loom, and when you wash it, it will shrink again because it's cotton, and that's what cotton does. So, I'm going to put it in the neutral shed to let it just rest until I'm ready to weave again. Thank you so much. I'll be back in a minute when I'm ready to go ahead and take it on around here, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I want to show you how to switch your yarn, and what to do, you know, to get rid of this tail, and how to make your weaving look as nice as you can while you're switching yarn. So what I'm going to do is just cut off, you know, quite a bit extra here. And then I've got it in my up shed, which is where it's supposed to be when I'm weaving from this side. And so I'm just going to take it and pull it in, and pull it in. And then I'm going to go ahead and beat it. Oops, I didn't pull it quite at this side. Okay. Now you can see that I have this little tail sticking out here. So now I'll put some more. What I'm going to do now, I've got all this extra here, but it's not enough. Well, yeah, it is. Okay. So I'm going to go back down here, and then I'm going to do a couple of quick knots to hold that in place so it doesn't come out and bug me. And I'm going to tuck it under here a little bit. And then I'm going to get my next color, which I've decided to use this this kind of, it looks darker on the camera than it really is. It's kind of a pink denim-y look, and I'm going to use that for my next one just because it's pretty. So I'm going to warp it on this other side. Do a half hitch, or I guess that's actually a slip knot. And then I'm going to wrap it on here. Sorry about that. My allergies are really acting up today. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of this, but I'm just going to do enough to make a little pink stripe and show you what I'm doing. Okay. Now then, I'm going to go back to the up shed, which is where I put that last pick through. And I'm going to put this through it. Make sure that it's in there good. And then I'm going to let it come on through to right here. That way I've got some overlap where I've got both threads. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit closer. I've got some overlap of these two threads, so that when the washing and shrinkage and stuff occurs, you won't end up with them not being something there. Now that doesn't make it look perfect. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, because if you leave it too long and when you wash it and everything, before you go ahead and finish your fabric before you cut these off. And if you don't if you leave too much, it might get caught on something or tangle on itself or something. So I just make it a little bit. And then I'm going to come through and make sure my shed that I went through all the right places. And then once again, I'm going to make sure I've got that nicely nested there. I leave my angle. I do the same thing over here. After I get a few picks, it'll be even easier to see that you can tell where that change was made, because the pink doesn't go all the way across. Now you can change them at the edges every time, and some people do that just so they don't have this. But if you do change it at the selvage every time, then you will end up with a really bulky selvage. And so I prefer to kind of spread it out, and I don't mind if it shows the change there. I just try to do it, if I've got something striped, I try to do it at a change of color, because I think it doesn't show up quite as much as if you do it in the middle of the change of color. Now that, that's just my preference. It doesn't have to be done that way. You can do it anywhere you want. And I figured out what was wrong with my down shed. I didn't think it was the loom, but I couldn't figure out what I had done wrong. But back here, some of these threads had gotten overlapped, twisted underneath each other, kind of like right there, where they weren't exactly, and that was pulling it down. And so when I fixed that, then it fixed my down shed. So I was glad to figure out what I had done wrong. And it wasn't really anything I did wrong. I just, that happens. They overlap sometimes. And if you can straighten them out back here before you start weaving, then it'll work better. I'm going to go a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you on how to go ahead and put the turn it, so the fabric comes on down, and you can pack it so that it doesn't mess with your fabric when you go over those knots. But I'm going to need some more to weave some more before I can do that. But I'm getting to the place where your shed is not maybe quite optimal. It's still good enough for what I'm doing, but pretty soon I'm going to have to turn it, because the shed will not be easy to run through, and because it kind of messes up your edges if you don't. So let's go ahead and just take a couple more turns here. And then we will go ahead and move it. And if it's not enough to show you, fixing the knots, making that even, then I'll come back and do another spot with that. It also will start jumping like this if you get too close, because the tension, keeping those of the yarns through here, keeping these together, makes that lower shed not want to makes those not want to go down. So we're going to go ahead and advance it a little bit. We'll see how much we can advance it with, let me back out a little bit here so you can see this. Okay, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to loosen this up a little bit, and then I'm just going to put my thumb kind of in the way there so that this pawl won't go right back down. Okay. Now we can see that it's gone on around. See? But it's still not in the place yet where we need to pack it. So I'm going to go ahead and take it a little bit more around, and then we'll see. I can't go too much further because this the angle right here will keep the beater from actually reaching the fabric if you go too far. But I can go a little bit more. So we're going to go a little bit more. Okay, let's make sure we can still beat it here. Yeah, okay. He's got a really nice angle in here. So if you bring it, you can just follow that, and you can beat almost all the way to the edge, which that's nicer than any of the others that I've worked on. The angle was further away from this beam, and so you had to stop, way out here. So that's another nice bonus for this particular loom. Okay, now let's weave a little bit more because we're almost at the place. You can see I've gone around, and if we go around very much more, then these knots are going to dig into the fabric here. So we're going to weave a little bit more so that I can show you that. I'll weave some more. I'll pause it and weave some more, and then I'll come back and show you how to do that. That way you don't have to watch me weaving over and over again. Be back in a minute. After I paused it, I noticed that the cord is making little bumps right here. So I can use this as an example of what it would be like going over the knots. It's just bigger. But this, you want to even this out too if you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen it from here. And I'm going to go ahead and back it up so you can go either direction. Okay. Now then, I'm going to let that loose, and as I go down, I'm going to look for a spot that looks like the fabric's about to start touching those, and I would say is about right there. And then I'm going to take one of these, like we used when we were warping, and I'm going to slide it in there. And then I'm going to go a little bit more. Okay, let's go ahead and stop this, and then we'll tighten it from back here. Okay, now then, when you look here, I've got that piece of cardboard in there, and so as I hit those cords, it's not making a lump in my fabric. It's okay for it to do it here because this is not part of my fabric, but once I get here, I want it to be smooth across there. So that little piece of cardboard in there makes all the difference. And that's basically what you do. You just keep on as you roll on. Now I will add the pieces of cardboard in order to keep it going and keep it smooth. Once you've got enough of these to kind of fill a whole layer around that bar, then you can stop worrying about this and just keep going. And that's how you do a plain weave. warp it and weave it. I'm going to, probably my next video that I do on this loom will be doing a fun artsy scarf with art yarns. And these yarns will just be novelty yarns you can buy at the hobby store. I'm not gonna be using my hand spun for that one, but um, but I think it'll still be a fun scarf, and so I'll show you how to do that. I want to check one more thing. Okay, all right, I think we're good, and I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope that it inspires you to try weaving. It is a lot of fun. Bless you.